Welcome to this channel, a place where we enjoy positive vibes as pertains to life, relationships, and marriage.
All right, so this class is entitled Sacred Families, Developing the Family According to God's Design. And this is lesson 1 in this series. And the first lesson, of course, we start with the idea of what is biblical marriage. So under this banner and title, we're going to be looking at the spiritual formation of each part of the Christian family in order to create a home and a family that is truly sacred or set apart for God's glory and purpose in this world. A very high-minded, noble concept for the family. Now I mention this because a family is truly sacred. That's why I called it Sacred Family. When it is purposefully and prayerfully set apart for God's use and purpose. And that doesn't happen by accident. If it just kind of happened, by accident, I wouldn't be teaching this course. But it doesn't happen by accident. It's something that you have to plan for. It's something that you have to work at. Just like being saved. Being saved doesn't happen by accident. You have to do this with awareness and the intention of it happening. Nobody ever tripped and fell and woke up. I love these movies. Somebody wakes up all of a sudden and they're like, where am I? Oh, I'm in heaven. How did I get here? Yeah, no, that's in the movies. You don't get to heaven by accident. You get to heaven by hearing the gospel and obviously with an intention of obeying and believing. Well, it's the same thing with the dedication of a sacred family. It just doesn't happen. Just because you've been married 35 years doesn't mean you automatically have a sacred family. It's something you've got to work at purposefully. So the secular world places a great emphasis on the importance of family, and rightly so, because it's the basic unit of society. As the family goes, so goes society. But as Christians, there's an extra dynamic to family that we see and strive for that society ignores, doesn't even look at. We see family as an instrument of God's will in expanding His kingdom here on earth. As Christians, we see family as a type or as a preview, if you wish, of what Christ's relationship with the church will be in heaven. We're living out the preview of what our relationship will be with God in heaven. So when I talk about, quote, the family in this series, it'll not simply be about how to make families more functional or more peaceful, although we will talk about that. My goal is to reach beyond what we are or could be as families to what we are called to be as families. Not just well-balanced families, not just happy families, or even successful families, but sacred families set apart by God to fulfill His purpose in everyday life and reflect a measure of the glory that will ultimately be seen when the bride and the lamb are finally united forever in heaven. That's what family on earth is designed to be, a reflection of what the relationship will be with Christ and His church. So with these ideas in mind, we're going to explore 3 areas of family to see how we can develop a more sacred view and an experience of each. So this is the overview. First of all, we're going to look at marriage itself. The family rests on the initial relationship between a man and a woman. There are a lot of views and styles of marriage today, but we're going to look at the biblical pattern for marriage in Genesis, which contains the DNA code for what marriage was meant to be by God. We're also going to examine the goal of every marital relationship, and the goal for every marital relationship is to be in love for life. That's the goal. To be in love for life is the goal of every marital relationship. We're going to look at parenting. We'll actually spend several sessions talking about parenting. One lesson will be devoted to a look at how we can instill true spirituality into our children or grandchildren, and not just the knowledge and the fear of the law. A lot of us think people who are people of faith think that teaching their children about God is all about don't do this and don't have sex before marriage and don't take drugs and be at church and obey your parents. Well, that's true. That's the law. Those are rules. They're important. They're the framework, if you wish, of our spiritual lives, but they're not the essence of our spiritual life. We're not about rules. So we're going to look at how do we instill a sense of spirituality into our children. Not the same thing as making them memorize and obey rules. And then we're going to take time to review the very important lessons that God teaches all parents through their children. In other words, what do children teach us if we're willing to pay attention to what they're saying to us? And then we're going to look at the home. Final sessions in the series will deal with the overall view of the home. A home is not just where you live, it's where you live your life. And we'll examine 7 different ways a home nourishes and molds a person's life, and how a Christian home sustains and promotes a sacred family life. So let's begin with our series. We're going to talk about, all right, so let's begin with biblical marriage. Building a sacred family starts with a biblical marriage. In other words, a marriage based and put together according to God's original design. So there are 3 elements in this design found in Genesis 2:18-25. And usually problems in marriage can be traced to these areas. In other words, when there's problems in marriage later on, you can trace back to some form of deficiency or misunderstanding about this basic DNA model that God has given us concerning marriage. So let's begin, shall we? There are 3 elements in the design. Genesis chapter 2 to the biblical marriage. The first element is knowledge of self. Let's read this. Then the Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. Out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called a living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all the cattle and to the birds of the sky and to every beast of the field, but for Adam there was not found a helper suitable for him. So notice that Adam was taught about his environment and himself. He was an adult person in touch with his world and his own emotions and needs. And through his experience and knowledge, he recognized one important thing. He recognized that he was alone and he was incomplete in that alone state. Note that God did not create woman immediately. He gave Adam time to know himself and his surroundings and his sense of aloneness. Now I mention this because the basic teaching in the Bible about self-knowledge in marriage is echoed by marriage counselors today. Marriage counselors tell us that the best time to get married is when we have reached a certain ideal level of both social and emotional preparedness. Let me explain. Knowledge of self requires social readiness. You're socially ready for marriage when you have some idea of what you want in life and where you want to go in life. You're socially ready for marriage when you've formulated some of your own convictions about things. You know what you believe, you know why you believe them. You're ready for marriage when you've learned to function within society independently. In other words, you may love and respect your parents, but you are now taking care of yourself by yourself. And obviously I'm looking at this group, we don't have any pre-marrieds here, but think back. Knowledge of self in preparation for marriage also requires emotional readiness. You're emotionally ready for marriage when you recognize your need for marriage. Remember I said, Adam, he was alone. He recognized that there was no helper suitable for him. He realized, wait a minute, I like giraffes and I like lions and I like this and that, but they're not for me. They've not been designed for me. I'm alone. I'm the only one of me. And yet, God permitted him to have the experience of seeing 2 by 2, you know, that He created things 2 by 2. So you're emotionally ready for marriage, you know, when it's not something that your parents want for you, it's not something that your beloved wants, but it's what you want for yourself. In other words, you're emotionally ready for marriage when you're prepared to stop being alone. I'm happy, I'm good alone, but you know what? I'd rather be with someone else. And this is important because some people want to marry, but they continue to live and think as single people. I see that all the time. Marriages have problems. Why? Because one of the two or both of them are still thinking like they're single people. You're emotionally ready when you are ready to make a full and lifetime commitment. In other words, you're ready and you want to do it. If you have to be talked into it by your partner, if you have to succumb to the pressure of your family or your friends, you're not socially ready to be married. And you're not emotionally ready either. Now what often happens is that you have 2 people and 4 variables that don't match. For example, he's ready socially, but not emotionally. She's ready emotionally, but she's not ready socially. The match doesn't light because one or more of the variables are not in place. It snaps together properly when all 4 variables are working. The ideal situation is that both partners are socially and emotionally ready. So back to Genesis 2. We see that Adam was ready socially because he knew his position in the environment, in the creation. He knew what his role in life was. And he was ready emotionally because he understood that he needed and wanted a partner to complete his life. And in His majesty and wisdom, what did God do? God created woman who was exquisitely made, both socially and emotionally, to perfectly complement Adam. So in God's plan for marriage, the partners know themselves, they know their position within God's creation, and they are also ready and willing to become, or rather to leave their single status to enter into the lifetime commitment of marriage. If you're not ready to stop being single, and you know, we're always thinking single so I can date people, but it's not just that. It's single with all the activities that you do as a single person. As a single person, you can get up and go wherever you want. I feel like just going out. I think I'm just going to go out, call up Jimmy, we're going to see if we're going to have pizza at 11 o'clock at night and shoot the breeze. Yeah, when you're single. When you're married, you don't have that independent freedom, if you wish. A lot of people think, well, I'll be married, but I'll keep that. And then then the trouble starts. And they're wondering, what's the problem?
Thank you for watching. Wishing you all the best in your relationship. May it bring joy and refresh you every day. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more videos. Comment and share. Share and share. Let the world know, more so for those who are married or in a relationship, that there is a solution to heartbreaks, depression or suicidal thoughts.